So we're fish people now.
Yes, we have fish. Not only do we have an inside fish, but we have outside fish.
Yes. And like all things, we tend to just jump into it full bore.
Yes, just head first, right in.
No shallow end, always the deep end.
Mm-hmm.
All in or not in.
Yep.
Is a good description of just how we operate and things. My name is Justin.
And I'm Labry.
And this is the Better Together podcast. And that really is like one of our things is if we're going to be into something, we're just going to be all in.
Yep.
We're going to do it all the way the first time. And even now I'm like having to throttle myself back of like, because we got fish.
Got to keep these alive for X amount of time.
Yes.
And then we can discuss future plans.
Yeah, because that's how you end up in trouble and with things that you end up not wanting anymore, right? And so it's like, well, I don't want to end up in those positions again. So it's like, start small, try to enjoy it, and then go. But like still, we go out to look for pond fish because we recently put a pond in. That video came out this week about building the pond, and then next week will come out the video about getting the fish and all those things. Yeah. So definitely check out the YouTube channel. The link's going to be in the description. But we started out with just like wanting to put a pond liner in. It was given to us for free. We've had it for a long time. We tried to use it once before, and just the location didn't work out because it got so much sun that you couldn't keep the algae out of it, and the water got too hot.
Yeah, we just didn't have the placement quite right.
We just didn't know enough.
Yeah.
So we moved it, have it in a new place. So far, it's doing great. You know, we're 4 days in or something.
Yeah.
The water's still nice and clear. The plants seem to be doing pretty well. The fish are doing great. We've got a crayfish in there, which we can talk about in a second. But we went to get those things, and we ended up coming home with a new tank and betta fish for our son to be in the house, which is something we've talked about for a while.
You have wanted this for a long time. I feel like it's been a year at least that you have wanted this for him. And I'm only just now at the place where I'm like, okay, we can do it.
Yeah.
It's fine. But we were at the store, and we saw all the stuff on sale.
Literally the fish, the food, the decorations, and the tank were all on sale. And we got a 10-gallon tank for $11, so just over $1 a gallon.
Yeah.
Right? So I felt like that was a pretty good deal. And we were just able to like hop on all those things, and it was like, well, why not just go ahead and do this and have it? And you know, so far he's loved it.
Yeah.
It still caused us to do that whole thing where like you do something and you're like, oh gosh, but this issue or that issue. And so it's like we got the tank, and we were going to use the tank almost just like a big fish bowl, right? Where we weren't going to worry too much about filtration because with one small fish and 10 gallons of water, you're not going to have too many issues as long as you do weekly changes.
Especially the type of fish, because it doesn't need the water oxygenated.
Yes.
And
there's a betta fish.
Yeah. So there was just a lot of things in there that helped us to be like, all right, well, we can just make this super simple. But then we get it all home, and we're like, oh.
The water gets really cold when it sits in a bedroom with the door closed. And so it's in his room, and we noticed the water felt kind of cold, so we got something to measure the temperature, and it was 66 degrees, which is way too cold for almost any fish.
Yeah.
And so we had to go and get a heater from Walmart, and that's now in there, and that's doing great. But when we got the heater, we're like, well, we might as well just get a filter.
And maybe we can get some water noise and some fun stuff with that, because he likes white noise anyways, so it's not going to bother him. But apparently our filter is too good.
Yeah, we got the whisper model, not thinking about that, and it doesn't make any noise, which is, I'm sure, nice in some instances. But if I'm going to have fish in a fish tank, I want it to be like the pond outside. I've got a waterfall in my front yard, and so I want a waterfall in the house. I want to be able to hear the water noise and like enjoy it.
Yeah, so it just kind of escalated beyond what we had thought, which is kind of what happens with anything we dive into.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's no project you can start where you truly have everything you need 100% figured out and dialed in when you start the project. That doesn't work. It doesn't happen that way. So.
And if it does happen for you like that, that is awesome. I pray that one day we'll be blessed like that as well.
I don't believe it's real. I'm not sure that you can do that.
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah. But so we got him that fish, and he loves it, and it's good. But then there's part of me that's like, but now we could get some, like, and I know that the speculation is that you can't keep betta fish with any other fish, and that's not completely true. You can't keep betta fish with other aggressive fish or fish that it could, bother. So like a fancy guppy is a slow swimmer and a fancy tail, and so normally those will have issues with betta fish. And they also use the same part of the water column. But then there's some cory catfish like that we're interested in. They live on the bottom of the water. They just eat in the rocks. They're pretty fast, so the betta fish won't be able to mess with them.
Yeah.
And so you've got to get those kind of matching things. But there are tank mates for betta fish, and that's got me like, well, we've got all this space in this tank. We have the filter. We have everything. It would be cool to have some other kind of thing.
But we have to keep this alive for X amount of time.
We haven't decided what X is yet.
Yes. We've not made that decision thus far, but I feel like it needs to be it can't be like a week. We can't decide this weekend, hey, time for more fish.
No, I agree.
Like, it has to be a few weeks.
Yeah.
At least, to make sure all that's good. But in that, we've also fell into like aquascaping tanks.
Yeah. The idea of having a tank that you don't have to work with as much because it can naturally filter and take care of its own issues using plants and things. And so that's
using plants and other fish.
Yeah, and other fish. And so that's really started to captivate us. Is like, well, that's exactly what we want to do at some point, is have a self-sustaining ecosystem basically in a tank.
And like that goes into growing plants in the tanks too.
Well, yeah, because you can use strawberries to filter your fish tank. Because you allow the strawberries to grow over, the roots go in, the roots suck out all of the nitrates and those things, and they cleanse the water. And it gets all the
nutrients from the fish poo and all that.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then you can go, strawberries from your fish tank.
We were watching.
You can do house plants.
What was the name of the one plant?
The pothos?
Yeah, so there was one of those plants growing all along this giant fish tank. It was probably like a 55-gallon tank, and he had a bunch of guppies in it, and then he just had the whole top was those plants.
Yeah, it was just the whole top. It was one giant pothos planter.
Like really the only thing on the inside was the roots from that plant. That was the only structure the fish had, but they seemed to love it. They were thriving. They were breeding. He said he started with 5. There was a bunch in there now. But he had never done a water change. He'd only topped it off. And it was funny because I read a comment because people were saying like, oh, this is such a stupid trend and blah, blah, blah. And this person commented and they're like, how do you think it works in the wild?
Exactly.
The plants take care of the water that the fish are using. Like they filter the water. That's how God created it.
That's how lakes do their thing.
I was talking about it at work and the guy was like, that really shows you that God is real.
Yeah.
Of like, how can all these things come together and work so perfectly together if there's not something behind that? And so that's what I really like about being able to see the ecosystem stuff and like be able to see creation in it, is seeing how God works through things and like the unique abilities that God gives things to live in a certain way or a certain place. Because, there's that whole evolutionary argument and we talk about it all the time, but it's like if evolution's true, then how are the animals still here if they needed to take millions of years to evolve so they could survive where they already were?
Yeah.
So you take the betta fish, they're from Thailand, where there's massive floodings and then big droughts every year. And so they can breathe air because of those droughts and live in very small pockets of water. Now, an evolutionist would tell you that over millions of years, the fish evolved to be able to do those things.
How'd they not all just die in the first place?
But if evolution was necessary for them to survive in those conditions, how did they ever get to the point where they could survive in that condition? Because if none of them could breathe air, then all of them would have died.
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense. And how could the fish will itself, man, if I could only breathe air, like, is the power of thought really that powerful? Come on.
And if so, why don't we have wings to fly already?
Yeah, we've been thinking about flight since men have been around.
Yeah.
How come we aren't flying right now? How come somebody's not been born with wings yet? It's exactly true. Or like the things that are even, if you think about the traits that they say that people evolve into, right? And I don't fully buy into that because for various reasons. But like you think about, they say like, oh, well, people are getting taller. And it's like, well, but the people before us didn't sit there and think, man, I wish I was taller. People now wish they were taller, but that's just because tall people are around them. But if everybody was short at one point, why were they wishing to be taller? They were just the normal person. The only reason people wish to be tall now is because they want to be tall like someone else.
And normally it's because they want to be tall so that way they can be skinnier.
Well, yeah.
I'm just saying, as a short person, I would like a little extra height because then it thins you out. But we can't all be blessed with
if you were lucky enough to be the same weight that you are when you were taller.
Yeah.
Like those are factors that doesn't fully equate.
That's part of the whole like just will it into motion.
It's not like a magic stretcher where it's like you stay exactly. You would have been, if only I had been 2 inches taller, put everything else the same.
Yeah. That's how evolution sounds a lot of times. It's like,
that is how it sounds.
If I could just have 2 inches and be 2 inches taller, it'd be so great. And boop, there.
Yeah, I wonder, does like Kevin Hart have kids? Because he's the kind of person, that little dude is probably like willing all the time. I just wish I was taller. I wish I was like that rock guy, And then like, are his kids going to come out jacked and tall because he looks up to the rock so much? No, that's not what's going to be able to determine that kind of thing. It was just funny, but like, that's the great thing about the ecosystems and like the kind of idea of even like a terrarium that you can plant plants in, even if you don't have animals in it, but you can plant these plants and seal it, and all of a sudden it's got its own rain.
Yeah.
It does all these things to self-sustain and take care of itself, and it's because God's given a way for those things to work.
The one that, because we had got some years ago when we were on a trip to Asheville, and mine fell and broke, so it's gone. But your mom still has hers. That thing, it is so full of life in there that you can't see into the little container anymore.
No, it's just like solid green.
A green blob. And like, we don't know what to do with it because it's, there's no getting into that and doing anything. Like, there's no even like trying to take tweezers down in there to pull things out. I don't know how they did it to be able to fill it to have life, but it's just so happy and it's never been messed with.
Yeah, I'd like to make one, even like a sealed one like that doesn't have like the animals. I'd love to do the animal thing. Because like this is the issue with our world today is like you can't not heavily get into anything. Yeah. So like maybe you're listening to this podcast right now and you're only here because of something to do with fish. I don't know what the title and all those things are going to be. But if you watch a video about something, all of a sudden other videos are coming in and it captivates your interest and you're interested in the moment. So of course those are the videos you want to watch, even if you try. Because that's what I do. I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch something else. And you're like, this is kind of boring. I'll just go back to those other things because it's new and exciting and interesting. But that's how it gets you with social media nowadays, is it feeds you things. And so it's feeding you all these things to be interested in, and you get captivated by it, right? And it causes your actions. It does, as much as we like to think that we can't be marketed to and that things don't determine our actions, we all can. It works on all of us. That's why they do it.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's a bunch of the fish stuff. But the thing that I've gotten into now that I'd want to do is called a paludarium. And so it's like a terrarium, except it has like basically the option for a fish tank at the bottom.
Oh.
And so they make one that's 18 inches wide and 18 inches deep and 36 inches tall. So that'd be what, 3 feet tall?
Yeah.
And so, but it's that terrarium, so you can have like the little dart frogs or something in it. And
those make noise, so no.
It depends on how far they are away. But they're not that loud. Now you've lost me.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, but so at that bottom of that one though, it has the ability to be a fish tank. And so you can have like it's a 10-gallon fish tank in the bottom, and
it's a big terrarium thingy.
Exactly. That's the neat thing about it though, is it has the space to have. It's like a square though. You think it's a 10-gallon square. So then you could build a waterfall in the thing though.
Yeah.
So you can have a pump in there, pumps the water up, comes back down. You could have real plants in there, different things, spider plants and some different,
you could have pothos and various things in
there. The one that you have with the holes in the ears.
Oh,
the leaves, the ears.
The Swiss cheese plant.
I've seen those in those different tanks. So you can have those in there. So then you could have fish. You could have the African dwarf frogs I saw as like an option to put in there, or you could have like some little guppies or something like that in the water part. Then you could have like the dart frogs or an anole in the top part, and so you've got just a full spectrum of life going and a full waterfall that comes down in the center of it, which would be pretty darn cool.
Yeah,
like or in the corner, I guess. But like either way, like I'm in. I'm like, this sounds awesome. And all of it is self-sustaining still. There's plants in the water, there's plants in there, and everything breaks down and
feeds itself and all of that. So that's really good. And we've fell into this back before, and that's how we ended up with a lizard and a tortoise.
Yeah.
But we learned quickly that we don't like things that eat crickets.
Yeah, I'm not about the crickets. Because crickets smell bad. I don't know if you knew that or not, but crickets smell bad. So, like, if your kid takes you to the pet store and like, I want this lizard, it's so amazing. First of all, there's only one lizard that only eats vegetables, and it's called a Euromastix, and it's a pretty cool lizard. However, most of them are caught in the wild, so that's kind of a no-no in my book. I don't really want anything that's not captive bred, that, hasn't been here for generations. And the thing about those is that they require extremely hot temperatures, and an extremely hot light bulb equals two things. One, your
potential for fire.
Well, one, you're eventually going to burn yourself, and two, you could potentially have a fire.
Yeah.
So I'm not really into that. And those bulbs, like the UV bulbs,
they burn out so fast.
They burn out, or you'd need to replace them, and so it's just like there's so many things about that. That's just like a pain with some of those lizards. But some of the other stuff, like the dart frogs and stuff, they don't really need a heat lamp. They need a UVB bowl, but like it's not as big of a deal, and there's not gonna be as much dust affecting them and stuff like that. So like that was that thing. I still miss the lizard and the tortoise and things like that. Like they were awesome. There's times I look back, I'm like, man, I wish I still had those guys. My dream was still always to have water turtles, like actual turtles, not tortoise, but they're so nasty.
Yeah.
They like to use the bathroom a lot, and they use it in the water, which requires extreme filtration and all those things. And to be honest, like our tortoise was a Russian tortoise. They're one of the smaller tortoise breeds, and so we were able to give him a pretty big enclosure, and so he had a lot of space to move around and explore and things like that. Probably still not.
Still like to get out.
He still liked to get out, and he probably still didn't have enough space. But then there's not a fish tank big enough for like a red-eared slider. Yeah. Like that's just, you can't do that. So then you need a big outside pond. Then you don't have to worry about the waste and stuff. But we're not in a place that you can do that. But it'd be so cool. Like at work, we've got a big pond, and you can go out there and walk around, and there's the logs, and there's all the turtles out there.
Yep, just
you don't feed those. So if you had turtles at home, you'd throw some feed out or something. They'd probably be excited. But the ones at work, we don't.
Yeah,
we don't mess.
Not allowed to mess with those.
But at one point, the big pond out there was a koi pond, and it had swans, but then they decided that they wanted it to look more natural, like what the, a real thing. So they took the swans and the koi out of it, and now it's just got standard
I wonder where the koi went.
Fish. That's a great question. Koi are fascinating fish. First of all, they're basically just fancy carp.
Yeah.
And so, like, people here look at carp as a trash fish, but then people here also, and in other countries especially, look at koi as this like super expensive, desirable fish. Well, what's crazy is we were watching a video years ago about koi, and I mean, if I could have koi, I would.
Yeah.
But we only have goldfish.
Lord willing, one day. But our goldfish are pretty. They
are
have white
pretty
on
goldfish.
them.
Yeah, we picked the nice ones.
Yeah.
We didn't want just the orange ones. We wanted the orange and white ones.
But we'll have to get back to them in a minute.
But with the koi, though, the thing about that, and even with goldfish, is people pay all this money because of the look of the fish, but they can change.
Yes.
Their colors can change and their patterns can change. And so it
Based
blows
on
my
environment
mind.
and diet.
Yeah, and stress and just like age. Like as they get older, sometimes their colors change. But
I mean, look at us. We change as we get older. So why wouldn't the fish? It makes sense.
Yeah.
But you just don't think about that. So you get this you pick out the fish and you pay a big price for that fish because of the coloring.
Well, some people know it and they're still willing to pay for that short-term game.
Like
and it's
those little fish the other day when we were at the store, they're like $60.
I don't remember which ones were $60, but yeah, some fish are expensive.
Like for a little, I mean, it wasn't like a big grown koi fish that was out.
Oh, the koi, yeah.
Yeah, that were out in the landscaping at the place. But the ones that were in the back, they were tiny and they were like this big.
Yeah, you're showing off camera. For those of you listening, she's showing about 3 to 4 inches probably.
Yeah, and it's $60.
Yeah, fish are expensive. Well, that was the thing is like we were looking at goldfish and we wanted to do like fancy goldfish.
Yeah.
As like we thought about doing that option. And then those were like $30, $25 a piece.
$25.
I don't trust them to live, so I'm not doing that.
Exactly.
And then feeder goldfish are an option, and like we went to one place and they didn't have any other goldfish except for feeder goldfish, but those were 20 cents a piece. But the issue is that mass breeding and having that many in a tank, they can be sick and have issues, and so I worry about their survival rate and ability. And so like we went to a place that has specific pond goldfish, and they still had a bunch in the tank, but they were all healthy. You didn't see any dead ones. And so that was pretty neat, and that's why we got those. And like you were saying, we were able to get fancy ones. We got one with a cool tail. One of them has white lips. Like it's super unique, like goldfish. Like, and she was like, "Which ones do you want?" And there was a bunch, and she was like trying to help us actually get the fish out of there that we wanted. I was like,
our
cool.
one request was like, "Can we have one with some white on it? We just want one that's a little different." And she got all 3 of them with white on them.
Yeah, and all 3 of them completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it worked out really well. And they have a ball. It's funny to watch them, though, because like 2 of them always stick together, and one of them kind of does its own thing. But we also got a crayfish, which I think I mentioned. But super cool little thing. Somebody made fun of me at work today, though. They were like, well, you could have just went and caught one in a creek. And I'm like, well, I guess you're right. But I would rather buy one like that than take one out of the wild, too, though.
I don't want to remove it from its natural habitat.
Yeah, and then it's
this
healthy
is already...
and it's not going to bother, like, because these crayfish and the goldfish are already living together. Like, we had no intention to buy a crayfish.
Yeah.
But then we got there and we're looking at the goldfish and there were crayfish in there, and I'm like, well, that's kind of neat.
Yeah,
if
they're cohabitating now, like,
and they're a hardy thing, like, they're not going to die, right? So, and she told us that it'll eat anything. Yeah. She said it could try to get your fish. I don't think it will. We just have 3 not very big goldfish. I mean, they're probably about 3 inches. Goldfish, and they have tons of space to move around. So I don't think it's going to mess with them. It hasn't yet. They're kind of dumb, though. They like to go hang out with him. And, like...
Yeah, they're like, hey, friend.
Yeah, you look in there and they're with the crayfish. And you're like, you realize that dude could just clomp you if he wanted to, right? Yeah. Like, if he wanted to, all he's got to do is just reach up and clomp. But everybody seems happy. The crayfish, every morning when I come out, is on top of his hide. So we put a terracotta pot in there on its side so that I thought the fish would hide in it. Yeah. But the crayfish is kind of taking up residence in there. But then I'll come out in the mornings and he's on top of that, which is pretty funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't noticed that because by the time I come out, he's inside hiding.
Yeah. I think he likes it at night. I don't know anything about crayfish besides, like, I've used the fake lures to catch fish before.
And when we were getting ours, we actually got to see the crayfish swim in action. So we got to see why the lure is like it is.
Because they swim backwards when they're scared and, like, trying to get away from something fast. I guess they want to keep their eye on it and run away. And so that's what the different lures you use for bass fishing that look like a crayfish. The crankbait ones swim backwards, or like when you do a soft plastic, you bring it in backwards. And so it mimics what reality is like. What's funny, those lobsters do the same thing when they move backwards. And they really do look like little lobsters. And this one is huge.
Yeah.
Like,
and every one of them has like an inch to grow,
That's what she said. But every one of them that was in there looked huge. Yeah. So I don't know if there's like varieties of crawfish. Because, like, all the ones I've seen in our creeks are about, like, this big. Yeah. I've never seen one that was, like,
maybe they just ate up by then. I mean,
I don't know. I've only ever seen them in creeks, though. Like, maybe in the lake or the river, it's different. And then, like, I've watched the Louisiana crawfish, but, I mean, that seemed like a pretty big one. Yeah. Even for their standards. I don't know.
So, we'll just have to see. But I'm really excited for all of them. What we didn't know, though, about the goldfish that we got, they are pretty to look at. Like, they're not just, like, the feeder fish.
Yeah, they've got nice fins and things like that.
And they've got the white spots on them. But you said that they get to, like, a foot.
Yeah, so that's what the internet told me, just on a generic search, was like saying that they could get to be 12 inches, and I didn't realize that. So if they start getting that big, we're going to have to figure something out.
Have to build a new pond.
Yeah, because our pond isn't quite that big. But, I really am happy with it. I still want to figure out, like, I'll keep fiddling with the rocks until I think it looks a little bit better. But, like, right now, I set it up again today with, like, up until today, we had the redneck setup going. We had the extension cord.
Together, it's running.
Yeah, we had the extension cord from the boat dragged over. We had just the hose just sitting up there, spewing water in. Not the garden hose, but the pump hose. I bought a $10 pump at Harbor Freight because it was such a great deal. Yeah. It's on sale.
And then we can get water sound. We can have a waterfall.
Yeah, well, and it oxygenates the water. So you want moving water and you want water going in because that alone gives enough oxygen for the fish. And so plants...
it helps with mosquitoes.
It helps with you want current and deep water, which we have both of.
And fish, and there was something else, too, that was...
I think it was just current, depth, and fish.
Yeah.
So now we have the 3 keys to keeping the mosquitoes out. And it seems to be working. It's also a great bug trap for all the other undesirable bugs in there. I do think, excuse me, I got choked up. I do think with the big rock that I put up to be the waterfall that it runs down, I think that'll attract a lot of the dragonflies. The butterflies will come drink off the rock because it's very shallow, and even some birds will probably come check it out. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. And it gives a great water sound. Everything's real hidden now, and like you can't really see it. So all in all, I'm really happy with where we're going with it. It's something that I've always wanted, and it's going to be amazing in the fall. Like now I'm just really looking forward to the fall. I did that today, and it was in the mid-80s, if not high, probably the high 80s. But even with it being hot, I was like, I'm going to sit out here on the bench.
Enjoy this.
And I was editing a video. The video comes out tomorrow. For you, it came out Wednesday. And I was like, I'm just going to sit out here and edit it and listen to my water, and I'm going to enjoy it. And I did. And it was peaceful and wonderful. And it's like, even in the heat, I think I can enjoy this. The hope is to soon screen in that porch at some point this year. We'll try to tackle the project of building some things and being able to screen that in. So that way then we don't even have to worry about the bugs. Yep. They really weren't that bad, though.
Well, they've really not been bad. Like, honestly, this year, like they were last year.
Yeah.
I don't know what the difference is. Maybe it's just we were better about the leaves, getting them gone or something. But like, they've honestly not been bad. He's gone out.
Well, it's also been very hot and it's not rained in the last little bit. And so moisture does a lot of that. And so right now there's not a lot of moisture for the mosquitoes to be breeding much.
Yeah.
And so we just don't have a whole lot, praise God. Like I'm not going to complain about it. I'm going to enjoy it while I can.
Yeah.
The only issue we really have right now are ants.
Oh my gosh.
We have ants everywhere. Our whole yard, I'm pretty sure, is an anthill at this point.
I'm pretty sure underneath, if you were to just like take a slice and look, it's just one big ant colony.
And I know it sounds very like, new agey, hippie things like that. And I always try to preference stuff that I say, but like, we need to be good for the environment.
Yes.
God created us to be stewards. That's what the Bible says. As man was a steward over the animals. We're not just supposed to lord over things, but we were supposed to take care of what God created. And so I'm try to be like as anti-chemical as possible. I don't like to put a bunch of chemicals out. I don't think it's good for us. I don't think it's good for our kids. And I don't think it's good for our chickens and things like that. And so I try to do the littlest bit of chemical I can. However, we're getting to a point with the ants that something's going to happen, at least in the front yard, because there's just too many ants.
Yeah.
Like everywhere you look, there are ants. And it's not just ant hills. Like all in the mulch in the front bed, there's ants everywhere.
Like you can't even find the hill, but you just see ants all everywhere.
I'll be walking and ants fall on me from the trees. Like it's very bizarre. This is the most ants we've had since we've lived here. I don't know what the change has been, but we're definitely going to have to do something to get rid of the ants, sadly.
We not necessarily like completely eradicate them, but we have to
mitigate.
Like there has to be some management, and we need a huge reduction of their population.
Because we've tried the cinnamon thing, but I don't think it gets rid of an ant hill.
Yeah.
But they just move somewhere else.
Yeah.
So we're going to have
it moved out the yard.
We're going to have to get something that just kills some colonies of ants.
Yeah. So if you know of anything natural that's, not chemical.
And not like pouring gas in an ant hole or anything weird like that.
Yeah. Let us know because we need that. Right now, I'm going to probably tomorrow whip up a borax mixture because it's like a laundry detergent thing. And people use it when they're trying to be cleaner with their laundry detergent.
Yeah, we saw a thing about borax traps the other day.
So I'm probably going to mix up some of that and set a few out just to see what happens. Because at this point, like, it can't get worse. Like, it's that bad.
Yeah. You're not wrong on that one.
So, say a prayer for us.
Yeah. We definitely need to do something about the ants. But I
because those things are mean. Not only are they everywhere, they are mean. And their bites hurt for days and days and days.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to not get bit by them yet. And I'm hoping to stay that way.
Yeah.
Praise God. But I know you and our son both have.
Oh, that's not fun. And they got on my belly. Little Anna there, so that was very uncomfortable. And our poor son's shoulder got ate up.
Yeah, it's been not fun. But what's funny too is like we've got all our stuff we're enjoying, and I want to be able to spend that time outside. But the weather people, as always, just have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, no clue.
And I was looking at the weather because literally I looked at the weather last night, and I was like, oh, cool. They've lowered a lot of it. It's not going to be in the high, the mid 90s. And then I looked at it last night. It said that. I looked at it this morning, and we're back to like the 90s, and I'm sure it's changed again now. It's like, can we just settle on something? Like, how is this changing so rapidly? But
how are you getting that far off to where, like, you can't just say, okay, low 90s?
Yeah.
And that's just what it is.
Because this is the time of year that we want to do all of our projects. And so I'm like, I want it to be warm, but I don't want it to be death.
Miserable, yeah.
And so, like, that's where we're at right now. Is it's like, okay, I want it to be warm, but, like, we need to figure something out. But, yeah, we're in full project mode. And so I figure that's what's going to captivate a lot of this podcast is just, like, all the stuff that we're wanting to do and build and work on. And so now the pond's done. I still have a fence to finish staining.
Yep.
I've got some deck work to do, the screened-in porch to do. We want to build a kitchen table. Like, there's just so many things that we want to work on and accomplish and get done.
And we're getting into a time crunch, too, because there's only so long
I'm
able
to
help.
Get the new baby's room done, so I've still got to move all that furniture. I'll try to do that tomorrow. Because I had a ton of stuff to do. I'm mostly caught up now. I still have to get my notes. I've pretty much got my notes together, but I need to be able to make my slides for our Bible study lesson this coming week. And so, just a lot going on.
There's a lot happening.
And I finally edited a video again.
Yes.
I had put a lot of that on you for a little while, and I was like, I want to edit one. Of course, I won because I edited the video that was on one camera, and it was all chronological. I did throw a couple clips that, like, I moved a couple clips, when I mentioned something, I showed some things, and then I went back into the archives and found some old stuff of
My job
the
was
yard.
very hard. It was not that easy.
Yeah, your stuff was a lot harder. For some reason, we can't get our cameras all to be on the same time.
Yeah. And
I don't know what the problem is, but they're very confused. They say they're on the same time.
Yeah, the cameras say they're on the right time. They say they're together. But then you put it all into the system, and the system's like, nope, these are not in the right timeline. Not at all. It's not working for me. I don't like it. And that's what it does. And then you're very confused. Like, okay, well, all of these clips go together. They're all from the same camera.
Yeah.
But then you find some, oh, well, this goes in with that, and this here and that, and oh, this one's backwards, and and then you pull in pictures from everywhere.
Yeah. I'm glad I had the easy one.
If that, previous video isn't the best, I'm sorry, y'all. I did what I could.
Well, the vacation one was a lot harder because it's just such a hodgepodge, and like we didn't purposefully make a story. And so when you don't have a story, it's hard to edit anything like that. But I'm sure it turned out well, and it'll still be something to look back on at some point. Yes. And that's the big part of it. And so being able to go back and look at things is the fun part.
Yes. I mean, I think it came together. It's just a process, and that's why that one was very late coming out.
Well, it'll just be like the same thing with our son when in the video that I edited today, he's helping me work on the pond. So he's helping me dig and move dirt, and he's even using his wheelbarrow to help take the dirt to the woods for me. And it's like, that's when I was most, you're like, finally, like, we're at a place where he can actually do some things, which is pretty cool.
Benefiting the project, not just being put to work, to busy work.
And not completely in the way.
Yeah.
Not that he wasn't in the way, but he wasn't completely in the way.
He was helpful. It was not just like, here, let's dig a hole and give him something to do so that way you can get work done. Because that's how it is for a little while with kids, is like, hey, do this thing. And like in the garden, it's been like, hey, you can dig a hole here. Like, this is your safe spot. Don't mess anywhere else because there's seeds and things. This is your safe spot. Go ham. And then I can get done what I need to do. But sadly, that's created a little digging monster because now he's like, I need to find a place to dig.
Yeah.
So
that can be an issue.
Yeah. Especially when we're like, okay, well, we have the yard pretty now, and we've got the garden full of stuff. There's really no place to dig. Like, I'm going to find a place to dig. Have a pot of dirt.
That's what he's had the most of. He's got a pot that he just plays with some dirt in it or some different things. But still, that somehow becomes a mess.
Yep.
It's inevitable with children, but it's helping them. And I think it was nice. Like, and I wanted to mention the parenting class last week, but I didn't have a way to weave it in. Or like where I wouldn't still keep us off track when you were teaching last week. But that giving them tasks that they can obtainably do is a good thing, and it helps them, developmentally. And that was like the wheelbarrow thing. That was something he could do and could be a helpful part. He couldn't really dig the big hole, and move a lot of the dirt and like break it up that well. But what he could do is help by taking the old dirt away in his wheelbarrow. And I made sure to say thank you a whole bunch and like make him feel involved. It was just good for him.
And appreciate what he was doing, the effort and things that he was putting in. Because a lot of times we, as parents, we don't take time to appreciate the effort that they're putting in.
Yeah.
And we only acknowledge the fact that they've done it or if they mess up.
Well, it's probably because like we see that comparatively it doesn't seem like that much effort, even though it's a lot of effort for them. Right. But to us in our minds, sometimes I think it's like, well, they didn't do that much. And it's like, well, yeah, because we're adults and we can do a lot more. Yeah. But for them, they did a lot, and they stayed on track and stayed focused, and that's a big deal. But it's a hard thing to acknowledge, and I'm definitely not perfect at it. But I'm trying to be better. It's hard. As you teach a class about parenting, you kind of have to try to be a better parent. You can't now let things skate as much.
Well, that's what we've always said to our son is like the goal is to try your best to do what you know to do.
Yeah.
To try. If you're trying, we're fine with it. If the goal is to be good and do what you're supposed to, that's perfect. We're going to mess up. We're going to have things. That's when correction comes in and so on and so forth. But as long as we are trying to be good, you are good. Like, because it's like, oh man, I'm bad. I didn't listen or whatever. Like, no, baby, you had a moment. You didn't listen then. That's fine. But we're going to go forward and try better.
Yeah.
We're going to try to do better. And that makes a huge difference.
Definitely does.
And it's weird that does.
Yeah. But it makes it different for us, too. It's like you've talked about in the past when you were doing the sign language interpreting and you were being coached and stuff. You were like, I really could benefit maybe because the teacher was, she was not being mean, but she was just, it had a different delivery method. And you're like, I understand that you're not trying to be mean, but if you could just maybe help me by like not constantly telling me what I did wrong, but maybe bringing up a few things I did right. And that's the same thing with our kids. Like we shouldn't keep what they did wrong from them, but we should also let them know what they did right.
Yeah.
Because they don't constantly mess up or make mistakes. And even when they mess up, it doesn't mean that one small mistake doesn't negate all the wrong they did, but sometimes it can overshadow.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to, hey, you did a good job at this part, but, you didn't do that the best. And if we could do better about that next time, I would really appreciate it. That way we could just do a better job all together.
And like today.
It's very difficult to do that in the moment, though. I'm not good at that. I want to be clear to other people.
Yes.
Like, I'm not saying like, oh, I'm so great at this.
It's a process. We're all trying. And like, we're learning from, we come in to parenthood from how we were parented.
Yeah.
And your parents got a lot of stuff right. My parents got some stuff right. And
they both got stuff wrong.
That they got wrong. But each generation learns, and hopefully, like, we're not overcorrecting and undercorrecting and all these different things.
There's so much of a balance of parenting, and you're never going to be perfect or do it right, but you can try to do your best. And so
that's what matters.
It's been on our mind recently. We've talked about it probably several times on this podcast, but it's because we're in a class that we teach parenting, but every week we're also learning parenting, right? And we've already gone through the class once. We're going through it our second time now. And still there are things that it makes you think about and question every time you go through something like that. The person that's the kind of the main leader of the whole thing, they taught this class for years. Their kids are all grown, and their kids have kids that are older than our kid.
Yes.
So they're very well versed, but they're still in every lesson. They don't come and think like, oh, well, I don't need to be here. She still makes a point to be there, and you get all this great insight and things like that. There's that conception in our world today, like, well, there's no book on how to parent. And while I understand what that means, the idea of like you're never going to read a book and be a perfect parent, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to get some information. Yes. And so like when you can find a good parenting class that's just setting out to help you, it's something worth doing. And that's a hard pill to swallow as a parent. You're like, well, I'm sure I'll do good at it. I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff you don't think about and that you don't realize. And even as people who have a kid that's going to be 5 soon, there's stuff that we haven't thought about.
Yeah.
And now that we're starting to see how we could have done better in the beginning. And I think that's in all areas of life. We could always improve in everything, in our faith, in our careers, in our parenting, in our relationship.
And
all
of
these things can be improved.
If you're not willing to improve, though, like, then it's just a mess. It comes off as egotistical in my mind.
Prideful.
Yeah, it's very self-serving and selfish.
If you think, anything that you think like, well, I don't need blah, 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 you need to remember what the Bible says. Pride comes before a fall. So if you're a parent, you're like, well, I don't need a parenting class, just be ready for a fall. If you're thinking, well, my relationship's great, I don't need anything, be ready for a fall. Now, we've not gone to some of the marriage stuff in the past, but it's because we routinely just try to make an effort at home of doing, relationship building things and talking about things. And I think we do a good job of that. Not that we couldn't use a little bit of lesson in some things, but you got to be purposeful in these things, and you just don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
You may think you're doing great and you're doing as good as you can based on what you know, but that doesn't mean that you know everything. And that's the truth about faith. You may think I'm on a great walk with God and blah, blah, and you very well may be. But there could still be things you're missing that you don't know or that you don't recognize that somebody else could help you recognize. It's why we go to church every week.
And like with the parenting and all other aspects, being in this class, you get to have discussions with other parents and you get to learn how they've dealt with different situations and things because like we taught in our class, each child is different.
Yeah.
They're going to require a slightly different tactic to help them be the best human that they can be.
I think that's why a lot of people have issues once they have other kids. It's because they don't really realize that. And so they're like, they're trying to parent the second kid like it was the first kid. And they realize that. But I think if you think about there's the stereotypes. There's the one guy that does the shorts, and I think he does all three roles, unless they just brothers that look alike. But I'm pretty sure he's playing all three things in the thing. But he's doing, the oldest, middle, and youngest, and you see these character traits, and then you think about like the jokes about how those kids and those are parented, and it's like, well, the first kid they parented, and they figured out that kid, and then they tried to apply that to the middle kid. And that
kid said nope.
It was in raising the middle kid they realized that wasn't going to work, and that's when it changed for the youngest kid, right? Like it's like that, but we don't always realize the progression that's happening.
Wears down the parents enough to where the third kid comes along, and it's like, whatever, have what you want.
Yeah.
Just
I wouldn't know that in my family. You had experience in that, but in my family we only had the two kids.
Yeah,
so.
No, it works like that. Except for whatever reason. My brother was like the middle child, and I was the older child, and my sister was the baby. I mean, she gets what she wants.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. But it's crazy how that dynamic works, and by the time you get to that third one, it's like, okay, you're alive. I'm happy. Just stay that way.
Yeah.
But in that, like, I forgot totally where I was going with all of this when you brought up the reels thing. There was a whole thing, and now it's gone.
I wish I could help you. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was amazing.
I'm sure it was.
I feel bad for you guys for missing out on the amazing word that Bree had for you.
On the insight that I was going to be able to provide you with.
It would have been life-changing, but here we are. And it's my fault. It's not her fault. I was the one that distracted and kept her from it.
But you know what? I forgive you.
I appreciate that. See, that's how you build your relate. See, that we just did a little role play. No. Well, in that case, I think it's probably a good time to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Because of me building a waterfall and editing videos and things like that, we've kind of pushed our schedule way far back. And so it's a little bit later than normal.
Yeah.
And so I'm ready to hit the showers and hit the bed.
Yeah, we got to wrap this up and tie a bow on this day and call it.
Mm-hmm.
So we hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.
And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all those great things. They help us greatly in the podcast. We'd love to hear from you and know what you would like us to talk about in the future. You can comment or you can email us at MoreGodlessMePodcast. We would MoreGodlessMePodcast@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
You probably want to know that part.
Yeah.
We would love to hear from you. That's also going to be in the description. If you want to hear us talk about anything, if you want to know anything about our life, we're an open book. We'd love to talk to you, and we'd love to talk to you about faith. We'd love to see you come to know the Lord if you do not yet. All those great things. If you want to know more about fish and things like that, then we can go that direction.
If you want to know more about this parenting class, let us know.
Maybe we need to make a whole thing about parenting at some point. But either way, we hope you guys enjoy this, as Bree was saying, and we will see you in the next episode.
God bless.
God bless.